I'd like to call to order this May 6, 2020 regular meeting of the Board of Education. Will you please call the roll?
Mr. Gomez,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Ms. Moffett,
Regular meeting of the Board of Education.
did she say something?
All right.
Ms. Moffett,
Here.
Ms. Schofield,
There she is.
Ms. Schofield,
Here.
Ms. White.
Here.
Item B, motion to approve the agenda. It's recommended
Oh,
Board of Education approve the agenda of the May 6, 2020 regular Board of Education meeting. Action by the Board of Education in adoption of a consent agenda means that all items are adopted by one singular motion unless a member of the Board of Education, treasurer, or superintendent requests that any such item be removed from the consent agenda and voted on separately.
so moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded.
Has there been anything else added to this agenda this week?
I don't believe so. I don't believe so, Mr. Martin.
I didn't think so either. I just wanted to check and make sure.
So I just moved a couple of things out of the consent agenda to my portion of the agenda based on board member request.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm.
I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to add a new item I6 under board business as a discussion item, board involvement and graduation recording.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded that we amend our agenda to add a new item I6. That's happening right now. Board member involvement in graduation recording. Any discussion? Roll call on amending the agenda.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White.
Aye.
This is actually pretty slick.
Motion to approve the agenda with the change.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Roll call?
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
Item C, opening ceremony. Welcome, our vision, Cuyahoga Falls City Schools, the hub of our community, committed to a culture of caring. We innovate, we create, we personalize education for all. Item 2, informational items. This meeting is a meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business. It is not a public community meeting, although there are opportunities for public participation. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic found on the meeting agenda, the individual must send an email to boemeeting@cfalls.org. Following the introduction of the topic by the board president, followed by board discussion, the individual will be recognized. If an individual wishes to address the board regarding a topic not found on the meeting agenda, she or he must notify the superintendent and/or board president of the topic no later than 7 calendar days in advance of the meeting. The comments of these individuals will be read during the board business portion of the agenda. In both cases, comments will include the name and address of the individual and be limited to 3 minutes. In addition, in public session, the board will not hear complaints about school personnel nor any person connected with the school system. An unabridged board agenda for this meeting can be found on your electronic device at the address shown on the screen. The next regularly scheduled meeting of the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education is on May 20th, 2020 at 6 p.m. A Board of Education Finance Committee meeting will be held on May 14th, 2020 at 8 a.m. We anticipate both of those meetings will be virtual and live streamed. And now for our Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Anthony Gomez.
A rush to get a flag.
Dr. Nichols has the flag, so please join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the flag of the United
United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
Thank you.
Item D, presentation, Friend of Education Award.
Okay, tonight, we have a special guest. We have Pastor David Hull Fry. Pastor is on a screen. I think most of you can see him. At least I hope so. Hi, Pastor. How are you?
Good. How are you, Dr. Nichols?
I'm doing well, thank you. I have a narrative to read, and then I'm going to show the certificate that we will be sharing with you. And then you will have the opportunity to address the board, and then the board will say a few things back, if you don't mind.
That's good.
Okay. Grandview United Methodist Church is located on the corner of 23rd Street and Phelps Avenue, just down the street from Richardson Elementary. The church has been in its current location for 70 years. Grandview United is a multi-ethnic congregation featuring English and Nepali-speaking Bhutanese congregates. Led by Pastor David Hull Fry, their mission is for all to experience the blessings of Grandview, grace, growth, and gratitude. Richardson Elementary School and the Cuyahoga Falls City School District are beyond grateful for the continual outpouring of love and support given to us by the Grandview congregation. It is evident that the church recognizes the importance of community engagement and collaboration. They understand that our children are our future. During the 2019-2020 school year, Richardson Elementary's population of EL learners nearly tripled. Pastor Hull Fry worked with his parishioners to create a tutoring program for our English language learners. During any given week, you will find upwards of 10 volunteers supporting our students. These individuals work tirelessly to support the Richardson community with the growth of our learners. The church has also been instrumental in translating educational and informational materials for our Nepali and Spanish-speaking families. Grandview United Methodist Church has provided the Richardson community with ongoing financial support. They have paid off school lunch balances, provided resources for our Helping Hands program, bought school supplies for students, donated gift baskets to our annual silent auction, and assisted financially to ensure that 100% of Richardson families and staff members received a We Are Family yard sign during the current COVID-19 virtual learning time. Like all good friends, Grandview United Methodist Church continues to always be there for us. This was most evident during a recent water main break. On this day, Richardson community genuinely appreciated their hospitality. We continue to be humbled by the commitment to the school and Cuyahoga Falls community. Without a doubt, Grandview United Methodist Church is a friend of education.
Wow.
And so I'm pulling up the certificate, and this is a certificate that we will deliver that you can put on display if you so choose. This certificate is presented to Grandview United Methodist Church in recognition of their ongoing support to the Richardson students, staff, and community. Your many contributions to student achievement, as well as your encouraging presence in our school and community, allows our students to grow academically and emotionally. Grandview United Methodist, through love and commitment, is a tremendous asset to the Richardson Elementary School community. Signed by myself and President Schofield. David?
On behalf of Grandview United Methodist Church, we will proudly display this once we're able to have it. And thank you to the Board of Education, you, Dr. Nichols, for your continual support and leadership. I want to thank Mrs. Hall, principal at Richardson Elementary School, for her willingness to allow us to help with the learning process there, and for all the wonderful Richardson staff and their hard work each and every day. My son is a first grade student at Richardson, and I've seen how hard the teachers have worked to transition us to online learning. And I've come to learn as a parent how much I appreciate teachers even more in this time and the training and the time they put into this. Also want to thank the Richardson Elementary PTO, and I've been a delegate on there this past year, and their dedication to their students of the school and to our community, and how much they've worked hard in making that successful this year. And of course, I want to thank Helping Hands for continuing to make sure that no child in Richardson is hungry or without clothing, and their dedication. And to the members of Grandview United Methodist Church, their willingness to go out and serve their community, to be a blessing to those in our community. And we actually have many retired teachers in our congregation who see education as essential. And so I want to thank them for their willingness and time to do that. And thank you, Dr. Nichols, and to the Board of Education for your continual leadership and allowing other organizations to be a part of the educational process. So we will gladly display this as soon as we're able to have a copy of that.
Pastor, thank you so much, first of all, for being with us this evening. But more importantly, you know that our vision includes committed to a culture of caring, and your congregation, through your leadership, certainly exemplifies that. We couldn't be more grateful for all you do for the children of Richardson and for our community. And on behalf of the board, thank you so very much. We will be so grateful for everything you've done throughout this year. And I know you continue to be a strong school community partner with us. Thank you, Pastor.
Thank you.
Other board members?
Thank
I'd
you.
just like to say
Thank
thank you.
Thank you.
I first met Pastor David at Richardson Career Night and or Career Day, and I sat in on one of his sessions and was thoroughly impressed, and have been continually thoroughly impressed since then. Pastor David, thank you so much for your partnership. I'm looking forward to many years of future success. Thank you so much. I will personally deliver the certificate.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on to item E, Treasurer's CFO's business consent agenda.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda as
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Roll call.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve, accept the following donations. I believe there were 2 or 3 on there. Those up right now.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion?
No, I'd like to thank the donors for their donations. As always, we know what our community as well as the country's going through, as well as the whole world. And anytime that there's someone who's able to help our district, it is greatly, greatly, greatly appreciated.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett.
Aye. Comments, Ms. Stoikoy?
I do have a few. I'll start with the bad news first, in a sense. I know we heard this week regarding the $300 million in cuts to the state foundation, which is our annual state money that we receive. We receive a little under 16 million from the state per year in those funds. The specific numbers had come out today. Cuyahoga Falls is set to lose $941,267 between now and the end of June. So that's just for this fiscal year. They're gonna cut it out of our last few payments. And we do not have any specifics on fiscal year 21 yet. So what I have heard is they're still committed to funding the student wellness and success funds that they put in last year and to continuing that. But there has been no word, and I would have to imagine that there will be more cuts to state foundation for the next school year. That's a little bit of an unknown right now. Offsetting that a little bit is the CARES Act that was passed by the federal government that's flowing down to states. That's going to offset that amount a little bit. We're supposed to be receiving that, and how we can, access that this week. We're set to receive about $570,000 in CARES Act funding. The restrictions are a little bit looser than typical title type funds. It can be used for technology, for distance learning. It can be used for any kind of sanitizing, masks, those kinds of items that were not typically in our budget at the time. Portion of that money does go to our non-public schools, just like the rest of our federal funds. We are the fiscal agent for them through the state. They will receive 81,000 of those $570,000. So the net difference to the Cuyahoga Falls School District is roughly $450,000 cut this year in total funds after we received everything and been reduced on both ends.
Christy, is that about a $500,000, a little over $500,000 that we're going to lose?
Yes, it's a little bit over $500,000, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Christy, I know that the governor's also said he's going to cut another 55 million from other K-12 funding sources. Have you gotten any further information on what those cuts might be?
We have not heard anything yet. They just preliminary came out with, the district amounts right now for this year. They haven't gone much further. I expect to hear some things in the, in the coming days and within next week regarding a little bit more details. From what I can see, in that the wealthier you were, the more you were punished, for lack of a better term. You had more taken away as a percentage if you were a wealthier school district. So the poorer school districts received more, received less cuts, but then they received a lot more with the CARES Act funding. So some of them are coming out to the positive that I've seen. Those are the poorer districts. We fall right in the middle. So I looked at some neighboring districts. I know Stowe and Hudson lost like 1.1 million. So it's all across the board. Everyone's going to feel that.
Any questions for Ms. Stoikoy on the news of the state foundation budget cuts? Thank you.
I do have one piece of good news to follow that up. The district has received the Auditor of State Award for our fiscal 19 audit. So that was for the 18-19 school year. Just a little background about the Auditor of State Award, the requirements for it. We meet the following criteria of a clean audit report. We have to file on time. There are no findings for recovery, material citations, weaknesses, significant deficiencies. And the management letter just contains no comments related to ethics referrals, question costs less than the threshold per uniform guidance, lack of timely report submission, bank reconciliation issues, findings for recovery less than 500, public meetings or public records issues, and failure to obtain a timely single audit in accordance with uniform guidance. And we have no other financial or other concerns. So that is definitely a great thing to have in your pocket. You know, I was not here for that school year, but the staff in that office and their hard work and attention to detail definitely needs to be thanked for that. They do an excellent job there, and we're going to continue that. My goal has been to be fiscally responsible and transparent, and I think this award kind of shows our commitment to that, and that we're being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars.
Ms. Stoikoi, thank you so much for that great news. And please, please thank the staff in the treasurer's office for all their hard work in helping make this happen. We certainly look forward to continuing to receive these awards under your leadership. And thank you for following up that sad news with some happy news. That's
Yes.
good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you.
Item G, Superintendent CEO's Business Consent Agenda.
Thank you, President Schofield, members of the board. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve all items listed in the superintendent's consent agenda.
So moved.
Oh, second.
Been moved and seconded. I would just like to make one comment with this consent agenda under personnel, and that's to thank our Director of Instructional Technology, Mr. Jim Morris, for his 7 years of service to our district. We certainly wish you the best in the days ahead, and we'll certainly miss you. But always know that once a black tiger, always a black tiger. You can always come back and visit, and we look forward to that. Thank you, Jim, for all you've done.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You will be terribly missed, Jim.
Yep.
Thank you for helping us along the way.
Roll call, please.
Christy, you're
I'm
muted.
still on mute. It's me. Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield.
Aye. Item H, Superintendent CEO's Business, Dr. Todd Nichols.
Thank you, President Schofield, members of the board. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the contract between the Cuyahoga Falls City School District and Garland at DBS, Inc. for the 2020 roofing projects.
So moved.
I'll second.
Been moved and seconded. Discussion?
Yeah, my first question is in regard to contract and the exhibit that are attached on board docs. In the contract, it states that Schnee Learning Center is part of the contract. When you get down into Exhibit A, it lists roofing material and services proposal. It only lists Preston, Price, and Richardson. And then when you get down into scope of work and roof sizes, it also only lists those 3 buildings. So I'm not sure why Schnee was not included in the exhibit.
Joe, would you
My
like-
apologies, Anthony. It was, but it was put under price. I got the hard copy yesterday and I'm looking at it now. So if you go to page 3, Dr. Nichols, yeah, that's it there. Go up one a little bit more. Page 3 there, you see it says price tear off. That should be Schnee tear off.
Okay.
There's also a piece right here. There's also a piece right here where it is defining scope of work as Schnee.
Yes. Yes, and if you go up a little bit, you know, if you page down a little bit more, page down the other way, up, I should say.
All right.
Up.
Further.
Get down, keep going a little bit more so we can see all the numbers there.
Okay.
Mr. Gomez, as you
Where do you want me to stop, Joe?
I want you to go back to page 3. Okay, you got to go backwards now.
Back to page 3.
Yes. On the exhibit, fine.
On the exhibit, page 3.
Yes. You were
All right.
just there.
I'm sorry. I'll get there. Apologize, it's moving kind of slow. So page 3 of the exhibit. Right here.
Okay. You'll want to go down a little further.
Okay.
It'll be the last. There's the scope of work at Schnee.
Okay.
Okay. Now we're coming to the numbers. Here are the numbers. You see there, Mr. Gomez, it says price tear off. That should be Schnee tear off.
Okay.
And there's two different numbers. The first number is 69,784 is for one section, and the 27,958 is for the other. And if you add those up, you'll see that it doesn't come to the 89,088. And that's because when they came back to me and said 97,742, I said we couldn't do that. That was too much money. So they went ahead and they said, if we give both sections of Schnee to Teamcraft, they will deduct about 86.54 off of that price, and they did. That's why we're at the 89,088.
Okay.
We asked for and received a discount of about 86.54 by giving that particular job to Teamcraft, both sections. Now, we were going to do that anyway because they were the low bid, but we just kind of talked a little bit about it.
Okay.
So you're saying right here, Joe, right there is where it should say Schnee.
And below, yes, sir.
Instead
Okay.
of, so I understood.
Yep.
Does that satisfy your questions, Mr. Gomez?
Yeah. The other question for my own purposes is, I know that we're not replacing all areas of potential concern. This was Mr. Martin's question last year, and I'm going to repeat it. With the work that we're doing on these 4 buildings, we will not have leaks on students' heads in classrooms, correct?
Yes, sir. These are the areas that we currently have problems in. Some of those other areas that are really wet, like at Price, we currently don't have water falling in. These areas that we're addressing now are areas that we have problems right now, as the scans would show.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Gomez, if you remember our high school situation, there was portions of the high school that had such dense concrete that even though the roofs appeared to be wet through the scan, that we're not having leaking issues because of that dense concrete. That same situation exists in these situations.
Perfect.
Yeah, much like the 500 series, that's the front of Price, same dense, thick concrete that the deck is made of. So Dr. Nichols is absolutely right.
Quick question. Is there any way that we can make sure, or maybe it's already been changed, but were those prices, the areas that were designated as price that should be Schnee, can we just make sure that those changes are made? So this way, if the public pulls it up and they didn't actually watch the board meeting this evening, that they have the true reflection of what that's on there instead of questioning why we're doing price again and again and again.
I will be on it tomorrow morning, Mr. Martin. I will be in touch and I'll get it new. Also, I did want to say this though, and Dr. Nichols knows, and we've talked about it. The Schnee work is not the type of work that it's really not the way it should be done. This is a large repair. So this large repair is not going to be guaranteed. Now, they're not going to fix this and then walk away from it. They're going to work with it until they get it. But there's not a 10-year or 30-year guarantee like a restoration would be, or a total tear off. You're probably looking at $500,000, maybe upwards of $500,000 to really fix that sawtooth in that back half, just the sawtooth in the back half of that entire roof at Schnee. So we're doing what we can do, but this is more of a large repair. It certainly is no restoration.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bugatti.
Thank you.
Are we ready for a roll call?
Yes.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Hi.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White.
Aye.
Members of the Board of Education, it is recommended that the board approve or the board adopt the job description for the literacy specialist position.
So
So
moved.
moved. Oh, I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
This is just for the job description, is that correct?
That's
Yes.
correct. I can chime in on this a little bit. As you know, we received Title I federal funds. Those funds are to be targeted toward reading, literacy, and math, focusing on early literacy initially, because we all know that early intervention is one of the keys to success. Having an individual on our staff paid through the federal grant, not general funds, that can assist us as we move forward, retooling our early literacy program will go a long way to impacting the success of our learners.
Have we heard if any of the federal monies may be subject to cuts as the state foundation monies have been impacted?
Not at this time. Actually, from the federal government is where we're receiving from the CARES Act, that stimulus bill more. So going into next year, there's a lot of unknowns out there, whether they will provide more federal funding and help for states within the next year. It's kind of hard to gauge right now exactly how that will all trickle down specifically.
Because I might wish to implore to my fellow board members as well as our administration that we may want to, with these unknowns that are out there, maybe take a little more caution in how we're spending money, especially in light of the fact that it looks like we'll lose $500,000 of money coming from the state. So I'm not against what I see here, but I'm not sure that maybe we have all the answers yet to some questions out there to continue on. Those are just my thoughts.
Any other discussion, board members?
Yes, my concern is similar yet somewhat different from Mr. Martin's, in that there's uncertainty to me in what the total cost of our literacy plan is going to be. We've to this point only received a draft of the literacy plan. The literacy plan, as far as I'm aware, is not yet done, and this is supposed to be part of that. I'm not saying that two literacy specialists wouldn't have a positive impact, but until I see a full literacy plan, how the title funds are going to be allocated in total, I don't feel that I have enough information to approve this today. I need to see the totality of what we're trying to do with literacy and not just pieces, parts, so that I can make a more informed decision for myself. So I would make a motion to postpone action on this item until a literacy plan is developed.
I'll second that.
Discussion? I'll add that a literacy plan is probably not forthcoming for at least a year. It takes a lot of work to put together not only state initiatives, federal funding, local input, taking a look at our own staff, especially our early literacy staff, and getting help in guiding us to develop the best plan possible. So we're a ways away from that plan, and I would hate to see us postpone this work until that plan is complete. Further discussion?
Yeah, I just know that in these new times that we're in, especially in light of our folks that are on layoff, some who might be on unemployment, others who are struggling to receive unemployment. I'm not necessarily against this, but I don't know that this is exactly the right time. So that's how my votes will reflect on this currently.
I will reiterate that this is a job description. It's not
Right.
for employment at this time.
Right. Is it not possible for us to adopt the job description without a timeline for when we would employ this person or these people so that we can get more information as it goes along? Then if it comes to fruition and we have the funding for it, we could vote to appoint a person, employ a person at that time. There, as you said, Dr. Nichols, we're just defining the job description. We're not actually employing anyone by moving on this at this point, correct?
That would be my recommendation at this time, would be to approve the job description. We may or may not bring employment before you as a Board of Education at a later date. But right now, it's just a job description.
Correct. So we would have it in the queue, if you will, but there's no guarantee that we would fulfill this depending on the funding that we have for this or not, correct?
And I would also share with you that I have emphasized, and my colleagues that are joining us would confirm that I've emphasized with our College and Career Readiness Department that the literacy plan and movement on the literacy plan needs to take place pronto, and that we are perhaps not in a position to move on any of the employment recommendations until we're further down the line with regard to a literacy plan. So I shared that as recently as Tuesday. Perhaps you will see it in the notes on my Friday packet, but just so you know that that's where I am in terms of recommendations for employment. I don't see that as holding up us with regard to a job description.
Dr. Nichols, and when I looked through the job description, I didn't see a salary range. Perhaps I missed it.
It's always on the posting, Mr. Martin. It's never on the job description because the job description is longer lasting. And so the posting would have the salary range.
Okay.
I'd like to add, I appreciate Dr. Nichols' comments that he wouldn't necessarily move to employ at this time, but I think that gives credence to the idea of delaying action on this, because if we're not going to employ someone, there's no need to have the job description approved, and that gives our literacy plan team time to develop that plan a little bit. It gives them some time to possibly adapt and change this as their work on the plan comes along. If we're not going to hire someone, I don't see any urgency. And I think it makes more sense to delay it until either there is an urgency, and I would probably feel very differently at that point, or until we have that literacy plan and we can have this as part of that.
Mr. Gomez, the one thing that I would share with you that you don't yet know that you might see in Friday notes and that kind of thing is a recommendation based on equity amongst our buildings for Title I services that may also include a recommendation to add 1.5 Title I people to our staff. And quite frankly, it was that prompted my discussion with our CCR team that said, I don't want to add people just to add people. I wanted to add people for a reason. And frankly, with all due respect, I think that the literacy specialist job description kind of gives them a direction, if you will. I absolutely respect your position. But I did want to add that additional piece of information that really transpired as a result of our CCR meeting Tuesday.
Thank you.
We have Mr. Gomez motion to postpone the job description until the literacy plan is complete. So let's go ahead and vote on that motion.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Nay.
Ms. Schofield,
Nay.
Ms. White,
Nay.
Mr. Gomez.
Aye.
Back to our original motion on adopting the job description for the literacy specialist. Roll call, please.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Nay.
Mr. Martin.
Nay.
And master facilities plan update. The OFCC canceled their April 28th meeting, did not meet. Mr. Bugatti and I do have a meeting with TDA, Chris Smith, etc. Scheduled for tomorrow at noon. Is that correct, Joe?
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you. It is scheduled for tomorrow at noon, where we are going to walk through some the future, as we see it right now. Joe, you want to comment on any of the site work that has been completed?
Yes, the site work, all three different phases are complete. We may see some work out there where a surveyor may be working with one of the other people that are on site, but for the most part, it's complete. What you see there in the corner of the building being the work you see going on there by the telephone pole there at Bolick is actually the city putting in a large electrical box, a rather large electrical box, I might add. So after discussion with TDA and myself and the city, we found and talked about with the construction moving forward that particular area will be or would be the best place for this electrical box. I just want to let everybody know that there was dialogue that went into it. The city worked with us to a great deal, and TDA was on board with the box going there at all. It wasn't a decision that myself or anybody at the district made by themselves.
Thank you, Mr. Bugatti. Any questions from the board members?
Yeah, Todd, we are not, as a district, we're not allowed to proceed with any kind of architectural designs or anything of that until we hear back from the OFCC. Is that correct? Or am I misunderstanding that?
That is not really technically correct, and I think that's part of our discussion tomorrow. Well, it's complicated, actually, is what I would say. TDA is not our architect of record until the Board of Education and OFCC make them our architect of record, and we don't have a GC. Now, the GC would come after the architect of record is chosen, and some preliminary designs and those kinds of things take place. Now, the flip side of that, where I say it's complicated, and perhaps some of our discussion is the board has demonstrated their affinity to TDA. And so we may want to start with some preliminary work. I don't think we really could pay for any of that preliminary work until such time that they are recognized as our architect of record. But that may or may not, like I said, it's complicated, may or may not prohibit us from at least starting down that road and having some of those discussions. Christy, you want to chime in at all on what I said? And if I'm wrong, tell me.
No, I would agree with what you say. There's a lot of moving parts in that, and it's kind of complicated with that, and keeping, especially when we have multiple funds and what would come out of those funds and where the money's coming from and all of that. There are pretty strict rules on some of it as far as how and when we would pay for those services.
And so ultimately, what I would tell you, Mr. Martin and rest of the board, is that before we paid for anything, we would consult with Rick Maniloff who is our bond counsel. And we would make sure that the resolution that you passed earlier that would allow us to pay for funds and be reimbursed at a later date at the state share, that would pertain to any kind of expense that we might incur with regard to design or anything related to the construction project. Confirm, Christy?
Correct.
All right, thank you.
Yep, you're more than welcome. Are you ready for comments?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I have really, I don't know, 3 areas, and they are all complimentary of our staff. First of all, we've put an awful lot of pressure on Julie Dudones, Rachel Seifert, and Cameron Lazar to develop educational expectations in 2-week chunks of time, and to work with our principals and faculty. And then we've done a lot of work through Jim Morris and Chris Shaw to follow up and follow through with those individuals that either are not online students primarily is what we're talking about. And even to the extent that Cameron Lazar is going to knock on doors for those that may not be engaged to the level that we want them to be engaged, along with Ed Dennis, just on wellness checks. And so not only have we put a lot of pressure on them to follow through with staff, develop educational expectations in a completely different environment. They have worked tirelessly. I mean, just tirelessly to try to do the very, very best that we can do for our kids and for our community and for our staff. And then our administrators, where they're noticing that, maybe some of our staff members are not doing as much as we would want them to do, following up and following through with those staff members. Now, I will tell you that all of our data is not 100% in the sense that we look at Google and Google Classroom and so on and so forth. And there's a lot of things that are going on that we've learned with regard to things like Class Dojo and other methodologies. What I've also learned, even from my own son, is that some of our data might be skewed a little bit in terms of the last time that they logged in. So for example, if a student logs in on their phone and stays logged in to their Google Classroom, it may show that the last login is a week ago, when the reality is they've been logged in all along. And so we've learned an awful lot through this whole transition. We still have a lot to learn. I don't mean to suggest to you that we have it perfect, but doggone it, our people are just busting their tails, and they're doing a pretty darn good job. And that leads me into the next section, which is our professional development day. We had a PD day scheduled for today. And so our folks put together a PD schedule where they were doing vertical and horizontal meetings across the district and at the buildings. And I really asked them to do 2 questions, or to examine 2 questions. Number 1, what have we done well and what can we do better in this current environment? And then the second question is, should we come back in the fall in a virtual or hybrid kind of a situation? What does that look like to them? See, because I'm going to host administrative council meetings every Monday at 9 o'clock for check-in. And our staff, whether they're on a 204 or 260-day contract, are committed to checking in every Monday just to see how things are moving along, so that we can get to November in a place where we're ready or as ready as we can be to roll. And so I value their input in terms of that hybrid situation. Just a couple of things. I mean, this is, board members, I'm sure that you may have thought of these things, but I want our community that might be chiming in tonight to think about think about just a couple of issues. What does it look like in a world where you have to have social distancing on a school bus? And so that's one really big topic that the school board's going to have to tackle in terms of what does that look like. On a 72 passenger bus, you can only bring 24 kids in at a time. And so that's going to be very, very complicated. It may open a Pandora's box in terms of all of the policy issues that we have to tackle. Secondly, what does it look like in a classroom where you have to have desks that are 6 feet apart? What does that look like in a classroom? Does that mean that you can bring in a third of the staff, half of the kids on Monday and Wednesday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the other half on Tuesday, Thursday, and flip flop? All of those things are pieces that we're going to have to consider this summer as we prepare for the fall. And so, again, I would imagine board members, if you've been reading your OSBA material and you've been seeing that kind of thing, but this is really as much for the community to know that those are just two of the questions that we have to address as we prepare for reopening in the fall. I know that our cabinet, spearheaded by Ellen McClure, thank you so much today, Ellen, for spearheading our cabinet, is preparing for return to work for our custodians, cleaners, our secretaries, our exempt office staff, those kinds of things. And considering all the legal advice that we've received and so on and so forth, there's just a myriad of decisions that need to be made. And that meeting today leads me into the third piece that I'll end on. And that is, Ellen spearheaded that meeting because today I spent at least half the day being a dad and watching my son walk across the stage and get his diploma cover and all that kind of thing, and watch the process that the CFHS staff has put into place, and talking to parents and friends of ours and friends of his. And wow, they have done an amazing job. I mean, they've been up till 1 o'clock in the morning for the last 2-3 weeks, planning and preparing and getting us into a place where we're ready to roll to make it as good as it can be in a very, very bad situation. And we were the pioneers. I mean, if you step back just a week or so ago, we were out there with the machete clearing the path for every other school district, it seems like, in the state of Ohio, but certainly in this area. And we took an awful lot of shots for it. But they have done so well. I have never, ever been more proud of a staff than I really have been these last few weeks. And I mean, it's just, I guess I'll just end it that way. I've never been more proud of a staff than I have been the last few weeks. They have been amazing. Amazing. Are we perfect? No. Heck no. Do we have a lot to learn? Heck yeah. But have they learned a lot? Darn right. And they've been amazing. So I'll leave it there.
Thank you, Dr. Nichols. Item I, board business. 1, administrative contract. It's recommended the board ratify and affirm the decision made at the April 15th, 2020 Board of Education meeting to approve an administrative contract for Dr. Todd M. Nichols as superintendent, CEO from August 1st, 2021 through July 31st, 2025. Motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Oops.
Ms. White, Mr. Martin? Discussion?
We are still live, right?
I was just gonna say, I double checked, we're live.
I have a comment I'd like to make. I'd like to briefly comment on the Beacon Journal editorial that was dated Sunday, April 26, 2020. I'm going to quote from the editorial, quote, "While most boards have quickly adapted to virtual meetings or suspended meetings unless vital matters need approval, others are testing the limits of transparency. The worst offender so far was the Cuyahoga Falls Board of Education, which recessed into executive session on April 15th with no further business on its agenda. Most boards typically adjourn once their private conversation ends, but this board returned, added an unexpected item to its agenda, and awarded its superintendent a 4-year contract extension, even though his current deal expires in July of 2021, unquote. And I'd like to say this is not true. From the moment we developed our agenda for this meeting, the superintendent's administrative contract was included as an item. This was never, quote, an unexpected item, unquote, and was never added to our agenda at that meeting. To continue, I'll quote again from the editorial. Quote, "We also would urge all boards, especially Cuyahoga Falls on May 6th, to ensure public participation remains a part of their agenda, regardless of the challenges it creates right now," unquote. And for the record, the meeting notice for our last Board of Education meeting and for tonight's meeting include both the address for the YouTube channel access, along with the email address for accepting public comment. That concludes my comments.
I would like to add to that you're absolutely right, Madam President. I also wanted to make sure that everyone knows that I specifically was one of, I think, several of my board members who were pushing to have that particular meeting done in a live setting and not virtual. We actually met in person at the high school for that, specifically for that reason. I understand that the state government implemented the rules, so to speak, for social distancing, and that was beyond our control. But I felt that it was important enough for the contract to show the support, to have that meeting as a, quote, live meeting for us board members to be face-to-face with the administration. And I was extremely disappointed that any of the inference from what you just read would suggest that this Board of Education did anything or something nefarious, because that's one thing that I've prided myself on since I've come onto the board. And I will say with 100% confidence that my fellow board members also pride themselves on being transparent with our community and with the public. I know I can't help if we have technical difficulty, which is what happened at the last meeting. But to infer that we were trying to hide something is absolutely false.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Any other comments before roll call?
No, I would like to thank you, Madam President, for clarifying what the status was at our last meeting. And I am hoping that people will do their homework before they write editorials or write things for the public by going back to our board minutes, examining them and listening to the audio, because I do believe that they will find additional answers for the questions that they have that would change the nuance, if you will, of anything that they might write. So I would strongly suggest that they do a little additional homework, call people if they have questions before they write their articles. You will find in our last meeting in the auditory component that the board was totally in support of this, didn't intend to hide anything from the public. And as I experienced technical difficulties getting on this evening, which I apologize for, it's quite apparent that those things happen. And this this suggestion that we were not trying to be transparent is totally false. So thank you for clearing that up.
You're welcome. Roll call, please, Ms. Stoikoy.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett.
Aye.
Item 2. And congratulations, Dr. Nichols.
Thank you, Dr.
Two.
Nichols.
Yes, thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And I'll just leave it at that. I appreciate everything. I'm salivating over what could be our future.
Item 2, bylaw policy, first reading. We have a number of items that the board will need to review under first read. Chapter 1, bylaws, Chapter 2, administrative organization and personnel, Chapter 4, instructional personnel, and Chapter 6, pupil personnel. No action needed this evening, but please take a look at these items.
I'd just add from a policy committee perspective, all of these changes are to be in accordance with changes in law. So these are none of these optional changes. They're all required by law.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez.
I have a question for our policy committee based on an OSBA policy development quarterly article that I read this evening or earlier today. Under policy, it said OSBA is recommending that districts temporarily, oh shucks, I forgot a word, policies rather than revise them rather than revise their current policies. Additional policies referred in articles in this issue aren't included since districts already have them. Well, we're sort of caught in a quasi area because we really don't have the OSBA policies approved, correct?
Correct.
So where do we fall in that recommendation then? Are they only suggesting that boards temporarily sustain from adopting policies by them? Or are they implying that we should take a look at all of the policies and temporarily suspend approval of them?
Their recommendation, because I was on the OSBA town hall earlier this evening, and that part of it was a policy update from Kenna Haycox. So what they're recommending is that they don't, and I'm not sure I agree with their recommendation, but what they're recommending is that instead of putting in policies that would need changes during this time of global health pandemic, instead of adding language, they're suggesting to just suspend portions of the policies that would not apply.
Right.
From where I sit, I think that's more confusing to people in trying to read our policies and figure out what is our policy and what isn't. I think it makes more sense, if necessary, to add to the end of applicable policies, you know, this is suspended due to current global health crisis, and at conclusion of, you know, the crisis will come back in effect. That makes more sense to me, but I'm open to thoughts from fellow board members if they want to go in a different route than that. But that is what we had done at our last meeting, and in terms of holding meetings, we just added the, you know, that if law allows us to have electronic meetings, we will. But
Right.
if it doesn't, obviously won't. That makes more sense to me, but maybe it doesn't to everyone, and I'm comfortable with doing whatever makes most sense to the board.
I would also add, in terms of policy, I have had a conversation with Kyle Lathwell from OSBA this week. We had 5 or 6 things that were still lingering out there that frankly, Christy and I addressed those 5 or 6 things. And so our third draft, if you will, of the policy manual is going to their editor, and we should receive it soon, which then would go to policy committee for review and then be brought to the Board of Education for approval. And those will include some short scripts, if you will, on which policies we amended and which ones we didn't from earlier meetings, and we would adopt it in total. And we want to adopt it in total as opposed to in pieces and parts because of all of the other things that it affects. Not only our online presence for our community, but also for our final forms, for our handbooks, for our public school works. I mean, it will touch every aspect of what we do. And so it would not behoove us to adopt pieces and parts. It needs to be adopted in full. And once it is, then we'll make all the changes that are necessary.
We're hoping to have a first read in June. Is that correct?
I hope so. Yes, I should see it soon. And therefore, as soon as I have it, I will convene a policy committee meeting. We will review it post haste and get it to the board for at least first read as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yep. My question to the policy committee then, before we vote, would be if you feel that the policies that we have in first read or adoption this evening need to be changed in any way, or if you are quite comfortable with them as they are and you would endorse their approval as is.
The ones for first read?
Correct, and adoption. Because we have both on our agenda for this evening.
Yeah, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mrs. White, but I believe
Yeah.
we were unanimous in support of all of these.
All right.
Yes. Yes.
And they don't need to be amended due to our current situation, correct?
No.
Thank you.
Any further discussion on the first read of these policies? Okay, let's go to item 3. Policy bylaw approval and adoption. This is just 1.20. It's recommended the Board of Education approve and adopt the following bylaw, which was reviewed at the April 15th, 2020 Board of Education meeting. Motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. This was just a very quick change to a housekeeping item in that the bylaw said that our regular meetings were held in the board meeting room and instead of the school library. So just a quick housekeeping item. This is a bylaw, it will require a supermajority. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield.
Aye. Item 4, policy approval and adoption. It's recommended the Board of Education approve and adopt the following policies, which were reviewed at the April 15th, 2020 Board of Education meeting. Motion?
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion?
I just add that the policy 8.12 and 8.14, those we are changing in accordance with recommendations from the auditors.
Correct.
I would like to add just a couple of words to a form that's included in 6.16 graduation requirements. If you were to take a look at page 8 of this particular policy, and it's lengthy. There is a district form that students complete recording their community service hours.
Is this the right form? Is this the right form, Ms. Schofield?
No, it's the next one where they record their hours.
Okay.
This one is where they choose their seal.
Okay.
It's a highlighted word that says form.
Yeah, we'll get back to
And
the
it's
page.
page 8.
Got it. It's right there.
So here's the log. And you can see that the language says, a student must complete 40 hours of community service beginning with the class of 2023. And I'd like to make a motion that we amend this policy to include the following words. A student must complete 40 hours of community service that is directly related to a community service project, beginning with the class of 2023. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? I provided you my rationale earlier, but otherwise we're just logging hours, and it's not necessarily clear that it needs to be project related. I think that helps clarify it for our kids.
Let me see if I can edit that right now.
Well, let's vote on it first, Dr. Nichols.
Well, my concern about this change is that it actually doesn't provide enough clarity for our students, because what is the definition of a community service project then? That's now an undefined term that is subject to a variety of interpretations. And I'm worried that if you get too much in the mindset that it has to be some sort of formal project that was already organized that then I go participate in, now their ability to complete the requirements for the seal is being severely limited. And so I think saying a specific service project is too limiting. And what we tried to do in adding the words that it has to be 10 hours per organization, need to be public or private, not with a family member, to make it, to try to define what that means. And I'm concerned that this is defining it in too specific of a sense that it might not actually be achievable.
There's I think the only requirement we have on the project is that it's 40 hours.
It's the policy reads, complete 40 hours by April 1st of senior year, recommended to be completed in increments of 10 hours per school year, turn in the appropriate intent form. A minimum of 10 hours need to be completed per organization. All hours need to be completed with a public or private organization, not with a family member. All hours must be verified on the district provided form.
Right. But I mean, as far as saying it has to be what kind of a project, how that's defined is really wide open. I think the only piece that's included here is the 40 hours in 10-hour increments and so on, but 40 hours is the total requirement to earn this seal. I just thought that the clarity, because it's not simply a community service seal. It's actually called, if we go back to the Ohio Revised Code, it actually says community service project.
Yeah, and when I spoke with Kenna Haycox from OSBA about that, she clarified to me that in the ORC states that, and by not defining that, they leave the idea of project to be determined on a local level. So our policies state that the 40 hours in 10-hour increments per organization in a public or private organization thus constitutes the project.
Right.
So
saying the word project isn't going to restrict anything, because the word project is in our policy statement.
So is there anywhere on this log where they have to describe their project, or do they just put the name and then how many hours? Why can't we add a little description of the project that says, my project will be working 10 hours at the food service bank? You know, just a little descriptive there. I don't know if that would maybe take care of what Karen and what Anthony are concerned by, but maybe, I don't know.
I guess the question I have is that this doesn't necessarily have to be one community project, so to speak.
No.
It could be quite a few. So I agree with you, Karen, that I like having the word project in there, but might we go a little bit farther and instead of saying project, have the apostrophe or the parentheses with an S for projects? So that way it gives a little more clarity that it's not necessarily one project for 40 hours. It can be
Right.
different projects with the 10-hour, you know, minimum for up to 4 projects.
That's a great idea, because yeah, you're right.
Yes.
I might do 10 hours at an animal shelter and 10 hours at a food bank.
Right.
Because that's kind of where I was going with,
Yeah.
trying to make sure I had some understanding on that.
Mhm.
I'm okay with the change if we want to do that, but I think if we add that S there to
Good idea.
project, that might give us a little more clarity. I don't know if that helps what Mr. Gomez was, you know, discussing. I don't know if that helps Anthony. Maybe
Well,
make that.
unfortunately, I think that then conflicts with what's already in the policy, because it says 10 hours per organization. And now you're saying project, and
No,
the example you're given,
Organization.
say, like a river cleanup. Well, river cleanup doesn't go for 10 hours. So now I didn't get all of my 10 hours at that project. And so
But then
how,
okay. But
how
then
do
they
I
could
complete my 10
do
hours?
7 hours of another project, right, for that year. And that's why I'm suggesting the description maybe by the student of what their projects are and adding the S, projects. Does it have to be 10 hours with one a year?
Right. Isn't the recommendation that by the end of their, or just prior to the end of their senior year, they've completed 40 hours? If they would do 20 of it in their freshman year, is that not,
That's
doesn't
okay.
that make them eligible? Because some students may have more time
Mhm.
during certain years of their high school career, if you will,
Right.
to devote to community service. Therefore, they shouldn't be locked in to the 10 hours per year. I thought it was just a suggestion.
It is a
And
suggestion.
they can accumulate those 40 hours at any
Yes.
time
Mhm.
in any increment to total 40, correct?
Not any increment. It has to be a minimum of 10 hours per organization.
It does.
That's what the policy says. So
Let's-
that's my sticking point between projects and organization, is that it's gonna, to me, it lacks clarity on which it is then.
Let's go back to the actual policy, Dr. Nichols, please, on that page 8. Let's get off this form and go to the actual wording that says students can earn the community service seal through the following method, and that's on page 8. Here it is. So the policy says students can earn the community service seal through the following method. Complete a community service project. And this is where I think Mr. Martin is suggesting
Mhm.
S,
Mhm.
projects that meet the following requirements. And here's the 40 hours by April 1st of the senior year, completed in increments of 10 hours per year, turn in the appropriate intent form. And now this is what Mr. Gomez is talking about. A minimum of 10 hours need to be completed per organization.
Okay.
So that would be like food bank. I have to do 10 hours. If I'm going to use food bank, I need to do 10 hours food bank. If I'm using animal rescue, I need 10 hours with the Humane Society organization.
And that is set in stone, Mr. Gomez?
Oh,
We can change that, but
We could.
this got punted back to policy committee because the sense of the board was that we hadn't appropriately made it a project in some sense. So when we went back to policy committee, this is the language that we added to try to make it more of a project, that it wasn't just an hour here, an hour there.
Right.
Right.
That there's some sort of commitment you're making these minimum 10 hours per organization. If someone falls in love with the food bank or the animal shelter, they can do all 40 there. There's no limit on that either. But this is what we did to try to make that project word defined.
Would we be wise as a board, since there's still some discussion on this, to maybe bring a motion to postpone just this particular policy to maybe our next board meeting so that we can have a little more discussion on this? Or do we wish to try to hammer this out now to get this, to bring this to a vote?
Mr. Martin, I would suggest that you need to make a vote, pass this, and if you want to send it back to policy committee for us to continue to work on this particular paragraph, that we can do so. But because of additional language that is in here relative to House Bill 197, et cetera, I strongly recommend that the board entertain a vote on this particular policy. And I also strongly recommend that you pass this particular policy because we are right before graduation. I don't want it to adversely impact any of our graduates. I'm not suggesting that it will, but I don't want any hitches in the get along, if you will, and we can continue to hammer out the community service piece in policy committee and bring it back as many times as we need to bring it back. But I would strongly recommend that the Board of Education entertain and pass this particular policy.
If my fellow board members are okay with that, I have no issue. As long as we know we've got the opportunity to bring it back, just to get, I guess, a little more clarity on that.
And I would encourage all board members who have comment about this particular service seal that impacts none of our students right now, doesn't impact anyone right now. I would encourage all of our board members to continue to send concerns, clarifications, thoughts, those kinds of things, and we will take it back to policy committee and entertain those ideas and perhaps bring it back to the Board of Education for adoption with revisions. But right now, my recommendation stays where it is.
We have a motion to amend the policy to add on the blue form the words related to the community service project, which I was advocating brought it in alignment with the opening sentence on this policy statement. So we'll need a vote on that first. So roll call, please.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Nay.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield.
Aye. Back to the policy approval, 6.16 graduation requirements.
That was an affirmation. If
Yeah,
I'm counting votes correctly.
Mhm.
yeah. Roll call, please.
Before we vote, one quick question for Dr. Nichols. Did we determine that there is no need for us to add in here the suspension of the extra credit for this year?
Thank you for adding that. Thank you for pointing that out. If we go back to page 2, if I scroll back there, I'm going to put you guys in purgatory for a minute. And I'm going to go back to page 2. That means, just for point of emphasis, that means that I can't see you. I put you away for a minute, visually. So if we go to page 2, at the end of page 2, students who enter 9th grade after 2010 include 20 units in grades 9 through 12 as described below. Our difference is specifically with regard to this right here, 5 units of, electives, so to speak. Our handbooks read 6 units of electives and 21 credit hours. And in consultation with council, because our policy says 20, we are good to go.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think I need clarification then. I thought we were going with 20 just this year to get kids over the hump, because we had required 21 credits, and we had some seniors who weren't going to make it unless we dropped that down to 20. And
You are correct, President Schofield. You are correct in terms of just this year. We are going to amend this policy to reflect 21 and or it's not an and, or amend our handbook to reflect 20. That's a decision that we're going to have to make going forward. My recommendation would be that we would take a look at our policy and amend our policy to reflect what our handbook says, and that would be 21 units and 6 elective credits. We don't want a discrepancy between the two.
any further discussion? Roll call.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin,
Aye.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White.
Aye.
Item 5, spring supplemental contracts and fees. We had
I'd ask for
started
this.
our discussion on this topic at our last meeting. At the time, we did not know if spring sports would be canceled or if there would be a compressed season. But obviously, since then, we know the answers to those questions. Fees, I think, refers to the pay to participate. And we did collect a few, but not much. And then spring supplementals, I believe, specifically refer to our spring sport coaches. So let's open our discussion.
Yeah. As I said at our previous meeting and discussion on our coaches, they were at the mercy of the state decisions, and I couldn't fault them for being paid for the first half of the season because they were doing as they were allowed to do. That was nothing that they could control. And I believe, at least in talking to some of the parents of some of our student athletes, that the coaches were actually doing all that they were allowed to do by the state. The question that I had, and I know that Dr. Nichols provided in our update what some of the other districts are doing to handle the second half, so to speak, or the season now that the second half was officially canceled, is that, and I think, Madam President, you also had included a little review from the Ohio High School Athletic Association as to what they were allowing coaches to do and not to do. But there was still some activity, maybe not near as much as there was the first half of the season, but I believe there were some things that were still going on. Association as to what they were allowing coaches to do. The question that I have is, if there was going to be any kind of change in compensation for that second payment of the stipend, that would require, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Nichols, but that would require an MOU with our CFEA. Is that correct?
Yes, Ms. McClure and I had lengthy discussion with our council with regard to this particular subject. And so correct me if I'm wrong, Alan, but ultimately it boils down to, if we change anything in the collective bargaining agreement, it would require a memorandum of understanding with our CFEA, which quite frankly is unlikely to be obtained. And then the concern from our council would be that it would result in arbitration. And ultimately, the question for the board then would be, are you going to pay for arbitration, or are you going to pay out the contracts? I mean, that's very it's a very brief synopsis of the conversation, but that's what it boiled down to. Is that correct, Ms. McClure?
That is correct.
Okay.
I believe that
Then I think the honorable thing to do,
I probably won't approve it. I think we should do our due diligence, my personal position, do our due diligence, approach them. My guess is they would say no, because that makes sense from their perspective. But I do think we should at least approach and have the ask, and see what they say in regards to anything in regards to spring supplementals. The only other question I had is, would it take board action to refund the pay to participate fees that were collected for the spring?
Pay to participate fees are really kind of an internal, we are not paying a third party, so it's an internal action for us. I mean, we would seek board authorization, not necessarily a vote, but we wouldn't want opposition to that. My concern a little bit is as the students are going through their process over these last couple of days, that they're one of the stations that they go to is their fee station. And so if we're going to do that, then I would recommend that we have direction to do that here pretty quickly. Christy, you can confirm or deny on that particular piece, and then I'll talk about another piece as well.
Yeah, that's what's happening right now. We've had other instances with internal things that we have refunded, field trips that didn't happen, different things like that we've done already.
We ran the numbers on our senior class, and we had a fairly large amount of outstanding fees that were not necessarily just related with spring or this year, that had existed from previous years. And so we continued to follow our standard procedures with regard to fee collection and so on and so forth. The other piece that I was going to mention with regard to due diligence, your comments about due diligence, another piece that we could entertain with CFEA in the development of an MOU has to do with fall sports. Right now, we are in a holding pattern. We haven't brought before you any of the athletic supplemental contracts for the fall. And so many school districts are engaging with their unions that they would perhaps go down the road of a staggered pay, if you will. I know some school districts are doing a 25, 25, 25, 25 kind of a thing, different stages of employment and completion of their duties with regard to their coaching assignments. I have asked for a draft of that language that we would then share with with CFEA. And right now, we are not in a place where we are recommending fall coaches at all. And that might be a way that we could bring on some fall coaches, head coaches only, bring on some fall coaches and authorize payment for spring supplementals. Those are the things that we've discussed with legal counsel and discussed with other school districts in the area.
I would support you having those conversations, and I would support refunding the spring supplementals, the spring pay to plays.
Nichols, on the resolution that the board passed, which said that contracts can be prorated based on the fact that the school year was suspended. When you checked with our legal counsel, how did that particular element play into their advice?
Well, the legal counsel that we consulted with and is the same legal counsel that also drafted that resolution. And so the same advice that I shared with you just moments ago stands in terms of the and stands in terms of an MOU and so on and so forth.
Dr. Nichols, I guess part of the, there's talk, and I guess rumor would be a better word to use, that the fall sports schedule may not occur this coming fall. If we go down this path of having still supplementals issued and that season doesn't occur, we're right back to where we're at right now, where we would be paying for basically minimal or close to, I don't want to say nothing because there would still be some things going on, but you're not going to have a sports season happen. Part of that rumor was that the fall sports or some of the fall sports may switch into spring. And if that were the case, would we find ourselves then having to potentially pay twice for the same supplemental coaching positions if we pay for a supplemental position in the fall? That season doesn't happen. It gets moved to the spring via the government, the OHSAA, and it's all sanctioned. And then we have to have these same positions filled for coaches. Then we end up paying twice for that same supplemental.
No, an MOU that would allow for staggered pay would include checkpoints, if you will, in terms of the completion of the job assignment. And so if the job then didn't occur in the fall, but occurred in the spring, then that would be reaching those particular checkpoints. Ms. Schofield, I'm going to go back to that point a little bit in terms of the resolution. One of the issues, and again, Alan, please chime in if I'm getting any of this incorrect, or Christy, if I'm getting any of this incorrect, but I think I'm pretty spot on it. One of the things that happens as a result of our CBA that identifies a specific payment amount. And then when we brought those positions to the Board of Education in a resolution and you affirmed them in that situation, it locked in that payment amount and authorized us to pay. If we were to change that in any way, shape, or form, we would then have to bring those back in the form of a memorandum. I think I got that spot on. Am I correct, colleagues?
That's correct. That's the information we got from legal.
And on the partial side, I know we're talking about coaches right now, but there are other people that are involved in items in the spring that maybe get paid year round. So it's part of their bi-monthly check that would still have had duties in this time, you know, from March till the end of the year for different clubs or class advisors or the musical, things like that.
So if we start down a road with a coach, we should really start down the road with the musical or whatever too, other things that,
Yeah.
I mean, it would have to either be a comprehensive look or no look at all, because it wouldn't seem to be very even-handed to pay for a musical that didn't happen and not pay for a baseball season that didn't happen.
Well, my question is, with regards to the fees that have been paid by those students for the spring, in which the sports events didn't happen, or I guess in this case, if our kids had to pay a fee to participate in a musical that didn't happen. I agree with Mr. Gomez. I would have no issue at all in even coming up to provide a motion to have our treasurer refund those fees for the spring only for this year, because that season those events didn't happen, and those were beyond the control of the kids, period. So I'll throw out the question to my fellow board members. Is that something that you would be looking to do at this particular meeting? Because if not, I will bring it back at our next board meeting to have that on there for discussion and some sort of action, either yes or no.
Therefore, we would be looking at two different issues. We're looking at the way we would manage the fees. And secondly, we would be looking at a way we manage the supplemental contract. So it's not really one topic that we would be voting upon, correct?
Correct.
Well, you don't need, if you're not going to change spring supplementals, you don't need a vote for that because it's already in the collective bargaining agreement. And the fees is really kind of an internal thing. You can pass a resolution just because you want to pass a resolution that would really support Christy and her department for providing reimbursement for those particular pieces. But that is, there's not a third party involved, so to speak. I know if I may provide a recommendation based on all of my conversations, and it's going to sound like talking out of both sides of my mouth, and I understand it. I get it. But I would recommend that we just go ahead and pay our supplemental contracts, and those pay to participate fees, we'd reimburse those pay to participate fees. Why? Because I think our coaches coached to the best of their ability during the spring, and our kids never got the chance to compete. And so I see it as coaching, and then our kids losing out because they didn't get to compete. And I know that sounds like both sides of my mouth, and I acknowledge that, but that's where I am on this situation.
That would be my recommendation as well. And then looking at the fall and seeing what we do with those supplementals. And for numbers purposes, the refunds themselves, we've only collected at this point, because we were so early on in the season, a few $1,000s. Typically, we're right around $15,000 for the spring. Some students have met their cap at that, so they don't owe anything. $15,000 in the grand scheme of things in a $60 million budget is not that much.
So then I guess my question goes back to Dr. Nichols and our board president Schofield. Do we need a resolution this evening, or can we bring that resolution back at our next board meeting?
I think, Mr. Martin, if we do nothing, folks will continue to get paid, since that was the understanding when they were approved for their supplemental. I think the reverse that would take board action if we were to decide not to give them the second of two payments for that supplemental. That's where board action would be needed, and that's where we'd probably have to pursue the MOU. The second piece,
Suggesting that if you do pay 100%, to pass a resolution affirming that fact, because auditors might be checking for that. So
Well,
OSBA said that
Mr. Gomez,
100% from that.
Mr. Gomez, may I chime in on that? Because that was also a conversation that we had with our board council. Because a number of school districts have brought forward to their boards a resolution affirming payment, not just of supplementals, but affirming payment across the board. And so when we brought that to board council, their opinion is that we do not, in fact, need to go down that road because of Ohio Revised Code. And the state auditor in his webinar, our council was actually in that webinar with the state auditor at the time. And the state auditor appeared to be asked a question very quickly and responded very quickly with that particular statement with regard to a resolution. I know that I have one sitting right in front of me from Copley, and I also have one sitting right in front of me from Woodridge that I asked specifically to our legal counsel. And he also had the one from Woodridge sitting in front of him and suggested that's not, we don't need to do that. And that's why it's not on your agenda today.
So let's go to the second issue then, which is refunding student fees. Will that, in your opinion, Ms. Stoikoy or Dr. Nichols, would the board need to make a motion to approve that refund, since those fees are approved by the board at the start of the school year?
No, you wouldn't need to. You can if you want to. We make refunds on different bases for those even pay to participate throughout over the years, depending on different situations, you know, injuries, those number of things. We refund them any given situation that would call for that for whatever reason already.
Okay. All right, board members, then, what would you like to do about this item? Are we done with discussion and have we reached resolution, or?
I'm satisfied with the discussion we've had.
Okay,
As am I.
okay, thank you.
I'd like to go ahead and refund the fees. I think that's a good thing. But I am with Mr. Gomez and at least asking CFEA about if we could get a MOU. If not, if it's going to be a big deal, just go ahead and pay it.
I like that direction too, Mr. Gomez and Ms. White. I think that's a conversation that you could at least have with CFEA, especially in light of the fact that we have $500,000 or close to it just cut from our budget.
Yeah.
Ms. McClure, I think that you've already broached that subject with our CFEA president and at least gave heads up that this conversation was taking place today.
I did. I spoke with her earlier today to let her know that was the direction we were going to be talking about this tonight. So I'll reach out to her again tomorrow and have an official conversation.
Thank you.
And once I get language with regard to fall, as I mentioned, we will then also share that with CFEA and start going down that road as well.
Good.
Do you think that this is an area that will eventually come to a policy? If we continue in these uncertain times for any extended length of time, that these types of contracts would be policy related, or are they just something that we vote on as they roll our way?
Well, I think that if it continues for any length of time, it would be bargained. It would be a bargained item that would be included in the collective bargaining agreement.
Thank you.
All right, let's move on to item 6, BOE member involvement in commencement. So a couple of things we know, and that is tomorrow, Thursday at 5 o'clock is the appointment time for us to be at the high school. And I think the other thing we collectively decided was we're going to wear our graduation clothes. And I shared with you a 1 minute-ish set of comments that I can make, someone else can make, or none of us can make if we aren't going to be making comments. So let's have the conversation.
Well, my thought was, I think that Karen, as our board president, should speak. Although I do think Kathy made, you know, if we could just add a little bit of a thank you for the teachers and the parents for the students, in relation to the students. And then I think, as I said in my email back, we can all be there just to say, congratulations, class 2020, go Black Tigers, or something like that, where we all can speak together. But I personally don't think we all need to speak on the same subject. That's me, but I'm open.
Thank you, Ms. White. Other thoughts?
I agree with Mrs. White on that. The only thing I would add is if the rest of us are there and we're all going to say something together, we have to be cognizant of the fact that we have to be 6 feet apart.
Yes.
So we can all on the stage 6 feet apart and say congratulations, but we just need to be cognizant of that as we plan.
Yes. Mhm.
Other thoughts?
Well, I typed something up and I sent it to you folks. Hopefully you received it regarding a thank you to the parents, community,
Okay.
whoever. If you have any thoughts about what I sent to you, could you let Karen or myself know? Because I don't have a compelling desire to stand up there and speak.
Or do I?
Nor yet do I want to force Karen to say something that she didn't write. So I think we need to come to consensus about what we may or may not want to do with Karen's message. If we want to amend it and let her speak as one person for the board, since she's our elected president, that's fine and dandy with me. I have no ego attached to these words. I just felt that because people have gone the extra mile during these last few weeks of their schooling, we need to acknowledge the fact that the board recognizes the pressure, the additional responsibilities that have fallen on so many people. And I felt it would be important for us to acknowledge that and thank them for the time that this has taken, for the extra energy and stress that has come into, energy that it took to handle the extra stress in their lives. I think that we've asked so much of so many people that we need to show our appreciation for what they have done. So that's, as much as this is focused on the students, I also want to acknowledge some of the people who helped them get, as I put in my note, across the finish line, called graduation. So,
Kathy, I didn't get it yet, but I'll
Okay.
look. It's,
all
you
right.
know, but I will look.
I can send it again. If
So I probably have it. I just checked my email earlier,
okay,
so I didn't check it later today, but
ready.
However you want to do this, folks, is fine with me. I have no horse in the race either. I would like to, however, at least name your names and have a name and a face together. I think when we're on the stage at Blossom, shaking people's hands and handing out diplomas, they know we're the Board of Education. I think just a random man or woman standing up in a video and saying, "Go Black Tigers." I mean, what,
true.
is this somebody's dad? Or, I mean, who is this? Who is this? I mean, I'm not even sure, they would know unless, so I think if this is the direction you want to go, then I think at the end, I would like to say on behalf of Mr. Anthony Gomez, Mr. David Martin, and so on, congratulations to the class of 2020. Then the video can hit Dave as he says, "Go Black Tigers." Anthony, Patty, boom, 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 boom. We don't need to even stand next to each other, because they'll just like with the graduates, they're going to merge all the videotapes together, and it'll just be in succession, and that'd be it. How do you feel about that?
I'm good.
Karen, I'll say this, and I've gone back and forth. I think having you as the focus, as our board president, delivering the speech will sum up all of our thoughts 100%. I'm 100% for you doing that. I do like the idea of, you recognizing each of the individual board members. And then I do like the idea of us coming up, whether we hold the Black Tiger sign or whether it's just us saying, "Congratulations, class of 2020, go Black Tigers." I really like that as a finish off. So I'm okay with having us do it that way. So that way you can go ahead and give our presentation, And then each one of us can be individual. If there's still some concerns about social distancing, we can do that individual piece and then have that merged all together at the appropriate time.
Do we have that sign?
We have a Go Black Tigers sign. I mean,
Alright.
that's the ones, the We Are Black Tigers sign.
Okay, so we don't need anything new or created between now and our 5 o'clock time tomorrow, correct?
Right. Mr. Gomez, you're quiet.
Oh, no, I'm good with what we proposed. And just remind my fellow alums, Mrs. White and Mrs. Moffett, that part of your graduation attire is your alumni medal. So you better
Yes.
It's hanging in my closet, ready to go. Thank you, Anthony.
Me too, Anthony. Thank you.
Board members, are you going to wear your name badge?
We could, since we'll be in a video, they won't know. Sure.
Sure.
I guess,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, we'll dig that out along
Yep.
with your medallion alumni. You'll have
Note
to.
to self.
And then what I'll do is, if you could, you've seen my comments. If
Mhm.
you would look over Mrs. Moffat's comments, give her whatever feedback, and we'll merge those two together as our board comments. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 7, future agenda items.
I was looking to have a discussion on the continuing of our distance online learning. And what I would ask is that Dr. Nichols, as you get more information as to where it looks like this may go for the fall, to bring that up when you think it's appropriate. I've had several parents approach me, contact me, stating how much they love what's going on with this new learning environment. And they're hoping that the district keeps this because they like it so much that some are considering homeschooling their kids because of what's going on. They love what our staff and our teachers are doing, and they love the fact that they're at home. They also understand that it may not be for everyone, but this is something that might be to a benefit to our district to give more room for more students to come in if we want to bring more in from the outside. So I'll throw that out to you. I'd like to have it at a future discussion or a future board meeting. I'll let you take the lead on if or when you'd like to bring that to the board for discussion and maybe some recommendations. But I wanted to throw that out there so that you were aware of what some of the feedback I'm getting from parents.
Mr. Martin, may I ask you a question too? Because I think we need to clarify exactly what homeschooling might be. Because homeschooling can be many things. Is homeschooling in their mind the fact that the teacher provides all of the lesson plans, conducts all of the lessons, they supervise it at home, and then they send everything back to the teacher to be reviewed, graded, whatever? Or is their concept of homeschooling that they will seek out a curriculum to come into their home and it happens at home instead of being here in Cuyahoga Falls with our teachers, our curriculum?
In a majority of the parents that I've talked to, it is the first choice where they are actually taking the curriculum that our district is providing, that our teachers are providing, and using that in a home setting. They like that. I don't know if it's because it's more of I don't want to speak for them on like a relaxed atmosphere, but they like the way the setup is. Their kids seem to be responding well to it. And if there's a possibility that we can keep that going, that's what they like to do. There are some folks who are, if that's what the school district is able to do, continue providing the curriculum, they're okay with that. If not, they like having the ability to have their kids at home to learn, and they may seek other options. So that might be other curriculum, but that does not appear to me to be the majority of the parents out there. There might be a small handful, but I've talked to, I'm going to say about 75, maybe 80 sets of parents. And I would say at least 70 of those folks are definite school curriculum. And I would say the other 10 to 15 are either or. So I don't know if that answers your question, Kathy, a little better.
Oh, I have multiple questions as a former teacher, and I'm sure some other folks do as well, because when we're taking a look at delivery of instruction, there's sort of two different things that are going on, whether you're providing it in the classroom or providing it online, would require adjustments in lesson plans. And if you're trying to do both at the same time, that's probably a discussion that we would need to have with our teachers union. Am I correct, Dr. Nichols? There would have to be some serious discussions about delivery of instruction if we're looking at a hybrid where teachers are trying to provide instruction over the internet and in the classroom as well.
Well, what I'd go back to is my superintendent's comments that are associated with the fall and our discussions about the fall and whether that's a hybrid situation and social distancing and all of those kinds of things. And frankly, the questions that I requested from our faculty and staff today that hopefully we can compile and take a look at this summer as we learn more about what the fall is going to look like. And if it does look like a hybrid situation, you are correct. We are going to have to work with our with all of our associations, all three unions, in terms of what that's going to look like in the fall. And just to chime in with regard to Mr. Martin's request for an agenda item, we have started some of those conversations because I know some of our colleague school districts have already have established an online presence, if you will. And it's all over the board, whether it uses Apex type software or whether it's locally developed curriculum, Apex curriculum or locally developed curriculum. So it's all over the board there. And a lot of the school districts have not fully engaged with their online presence, but it's set up and they're ready to roll in anticipation of a different situation this fall. So not to disturb anybody or excite anybody or whatever, but those discussions have begun, not only here locally, but across the state in terms of what education might look like come fall and what element of online presence that might be.
I have a future agenda item as well. I'd like to put on our
Can
next
we,
agenda.
Mr. Gomez, I had a comment on the previous one before we jump ahead, if that's okay. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that I'm hearing the opposite of what Mr. Martin's hearing, that some of the kids are really suffering because they can't attend class. They're getting quizzes and no instruction. They're getting major work and their work is not being graded. I'm hearing all kinds, and then just the emotional suffering because they can't be with their friends, their teachers. And that's what I'm hearing. You know, again, I'm not, hearing from 70, 80 parents, just a few, but that is what I'm hearing. And it concerns me terribly that, and again, we might have to do this in the fall, that if we do, that's what we have to do. But I just know.
I think, Mrs. White, a lot of it has to do too with the age of the child. I know
these are high school students that I'm hearing from, so
that's good. I know the ones all in my neighborhood that tend to be tinier. There are a couple high school kids, but the tinier ones are struggling. And they I think their parents are too.
Yes. Yep.
I know one who's got 3 kids and she can't have school at a certain time because she doesn't have enough internet power and it buffers and they, so she's got to spread this out during the day and a lot of things too with assignments without instruction, that kind of thing. The same thing you're seeing.
Yeah.
So I think it's all new. It's,
it is
it's
right.
First time out the gate. So we'll at least have time to perfect it, so to speak, or at least improve it in the interim here. But I just want to be cautious. I mean, the high school guy down the street likes it. He sleeps in and doesn't have to get up. And, you know, has been living in t-shirts and pajama pants. So, you know, I mean, he's kind of good to go, but it really varies, I think. And we just have to be real thoughtful about how we move forward.
I agree.
I don't think people are trying to intentionally do a bad job.
Oh,
In
no,
fact,
I'm not saying that, but
Yeah,
it's just
I think
some of the frustration is
Yep.
kids will submit homework or whatever, and then it doesn't get in. And so it
Yeah.
doesn't get counted. We have to watch, and again, it is a learning process. I know that. I'm learning myself. I've never Zoomed before, so I'm learning.
Yes, no.
But
Well,
to me,
I
it's
think
it's
hearing
not
all
only
three-
that, it's the emotional connections they have with each other and their teachers, and they're missing that, I think, at all levels. And that's all. I just, have a concern there.
Thank you for your comments. Mr. Gomez, new agenda items, please.
Yeah, well, I'll have comments on Mr. Martin's future agenda item, but I'll reserve them for a future agenda. My future agenda item was that at the next meeting, I'd like us to have discussion under board business in regards to superintendent and treasurer evaluation, as we need to complete those by the end of July. And since we are in a new world, we'll need to discuss how we want to go about doing those.
Thank you. Two good items. Thank you for that. Other future agenda items? We'll move to committee reports. Alliance for School and Community Growth, Mrs. Moffett.
Next week, I believe, on Zoom.
Thank you. Athletics and Activity Council, Mr. Martin.
Well, our next meeting, I believe, is scheduled for June 22nd. We did have a virtual college signing for 6 of our seniors who are graduating this year, as they will be signing to continue their academic and athletic careers to colleges. My apologies in advance if I butcher any of these names, but we have Bronovan Arsenault, who's going to the University of Rochester, Donovan Deaton, who's going to Baldwin-Wallace, Kyle DeReamer, who's going to Hocking College, Noah McClendon, who's going to Alderson, is that Broadus? My apologies on that. Alex Rowan, who's going to Ohio Northern, and Jordan Tuttle, who's going to Marietta. I got a chance to tune in for a little bit of that. I got a late start due to some technical difficulties here, but it's a little different seeing these on virtual, on Zoom. Some of it's good, some of it, I'll say the jury's still out. But again, congratulations not only to those 6 seniors who are graduating and continuing on, but to all of our 2020 seniors who will be graduating and continuing on either to college or into the working world, or in some cases, just taking some time to figure out what they want to do.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Board policy, Ms. White or Mr. Gomez?
Well, we just submitted what we had, and I don't think we have a current meeting scheduled, but hopefully in June with the new OSBA policies.
Okay, thank you. Business Advisory Council, Ms. White, Mr. Martin.
Again, we have a meeting scheduled at 8 a.m. Tuesday on May 26th, I think.
Just
Thank
want to
you.
make sure everybody, if you're able, please support our local small businesses as well as businesses in general here in Cuyahoga Falls.
Thank you. Financial Advisory Committee, Mr. Martin.
Well, Ms. Stoikoi kind of gave us the congratulations for the Auditor of State Award. Again, coming up, we've got a meeting, I believe it's May 14th. I believe that our treasurer, Ms. Stoikoi, is planning on giving a preview of the 5-year forecast in light of what the state has told us they're going to take from us. I think it's going to be a little different than what we were maybe looking at or hoping for. I will also at that committee meeting be asking our members of the public who are committee members to see if they would like to join us at our next board meeting to help give the presentation on that. Looking forward to kind of seeing how that progresses along. Our audit turned out to be awesome. And on a personal note, I'd just like to thank my fellow board members for not only our current treasurer that we have working for us, but for the last few. It took some courage in those respective candidates that we brought in, and it has helped put this district, I believe, in solid footing. And with Ms. Stoikoy, who's in there now, I think it's only going to continue to get better. So again, I wanted to thank each and every one of you for having the courage to make those decisions, and looking forward to the next few years.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Foundation and Alumni Association, Mr. Gomez.
We'll be meeting via Zoom next Tuesday evening, but we do have some exciting news. Our first newsletter will be coming out within the next month or so. Both Dr. Nichols and I will be submitting information for that. We are looking for people that have good news to share about alumni to pass that on to us to put in our newsletter. We're also looking for people that may have previously received a scholarship from the Alumni Association to give us a little bit about how that helped them through college. So we would like to find people if you know of anyone. Otherwise, I'm the guinea pig. That's gonna I find myself that interesting, but I'll do it nonetheless. And our website is coming along quite well. We hope to launch that by June 1st. We have Mark Noonan, who's an alumni, helping with that, along with Jerry Lynn Ferguson, and they're spearheading that work on the website, and it's really coming together well. So we look forward to having our presence be more vibrant in the near future.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Legislative Liaison, Mr. Gomez again, please.
Yeah, the legislature is back in session as of yesterday and today. Nothing new has been passed in regards to education at this time. In OSBA's town hall earlier this evening, they suggested that they don't see much happening. They'll probably pass some stuff that they have to, but not to look for any big changes in regards to education. It's a campaign year and they want to get back out there.
Thank you again. Last, Student Achievement Liaison, just a couple of things in terms of student achievement. There's a new state kindergarten readiness assessment. It's shorter, 27 items instead of 50. Those items have been used in previous years, so if you've already taught kindergarten, you don't need a refresher class. And that will be implemented in the fall with all new incoming kindergarten children to see if they can demonstrate readiness for kindergarten curriculum. This is Teacher Appreciation Week, and so I'd like to give a shout out to all the staff members who work each and every day to make a difference in our little Black Tigers' lives. Also, Monday was School Bus Driver Appreciation Day. So thank you to them for getting our kids to and from school safely, field trips, sporting events. And then Wednesday was School Nurses Day.
Yeah.
And I know that they certainly help keep everyone healthy and going in each of our schools too. And then finally, board members, I submitted to you a student wellness and success summary. If you could please look that over. There is a question regarding a June 2nd full day, 8 to 3 overview session that hopefully you're all able to attend. I have heard back from a couple of you. I understand that as things are up in the air and work schedules are iffy, you can't commit. And I appreciate hearing from you in that regard. However, we'll do our best to bring you up to speed some other way if by chance that date does not work. And on that note, we'll move now to comments, and let's start with Mr. Martin.
I have two things. First of all, to our graduating class of 2020, I want to wish each of you only the best in your future endeavors. And I'd also like to congratulate Dr. Nichols on the reaffirmation of your contract. Looking forward to the next several years to getting a project done up there at the Bolix site, and can't wait to see some of the curriculum ideas that come to fruition here. So again, congratulations to you on the contract as well as the graduation of your son.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Ms. White?
I was just gonna do a thank you and a congrats to Christy. I have the press release here. I printed it out because you know me, the hard copies. But congratulations for our Auditors Award. I also wanted to shout out for our Teachers Appreciation Week and thank them for going above and beyond just their wonderful work, and that they have our sincere gratitude for all they do every day, not just now. And then I also noticed it was National Nurses Day, so I wanted to shout out to all those nurses that are in our community that live here or help our families and our Black Tigers all the time. And then, okay, I think that's it.
Thank you, Ms. White. Mr. Gomez?
I had the opportunity to attend Lincoln's PTA meeting, which they held via Zoom. And I want to give a shout out to Katie Booser and Tracy Anderson. They were both on the Lincoln PTA board for many years and are stepping down as their youngest children move on to middle school. They made a big difference at Lincoln. Also for Silver Lake Home and School League, Rebecca Brockmeyer, who's been the president there for several years, is stepping down as well. So a gratitude to her, as well as a shout out to their Pave the Way 5K, which they are still fundraising for. And then Price PTO, Casey Hudak is stepping down after many years as president there. So thanks to all of those phenomenal women for all they've done for their respective buildings. The teacher parades have been a huge hit. The Lincoln one came down my street and just about the whole neighborhood was out on their porch. And it was just a thrill. I know Silver Lake had one. I got to see Price's the other day. Preston has one tomorrow. Richardson, I don't know if any of you have been out and about driving in the Richardson neighborhood, but there's yard signs in every student and staff member's yard that attends Richardson, talking about how proud they are to be a Black Tiger and to try to keep that sense of community. And Richardson PTO is trying to continue to honor their fifth graders via their PTO Facebook page. Since they won't get their formal fifth grade recognition, they're trying to find some way to continue to recognize those students. I want to thank those involved in the PD Day today. I was incredibly impressed with how they made that happen in these situations. It was just incredibly impressive. I also reached out yesterday to Mrs. Bruger and Mrs. Donahue to extend my thanks for their work in that Clean Audit Award. And they were very proud and grateful for that. I also want to shout out our Tiger Bag program because our district is helping with that as well as our food service program. Phenomenal things happening to make sure that students continue to be fed during this time. Tiger Bags is doing amazing work and they are looking for donations as well. I have heard only positive remarks about how we have done our graduation from families that have encountered it. They are just blown away with what our staff put together. And as Dr. Nichols said, we are the model for the state. Akron just announced on Monday that basically they stole our plan. And I know they stole our plan because the board members reached out to me and asked me to send them our plan so that they could. So we are the model for the state. I'm very proud. Not what we're doing for our students, but of what we're able to do to help students across this state have that graduation. And lastly, OSBA continues to have weekly town halls every Wednesday night from 4 to 5. There's just been a lot of really great information at those. And once a month, they have a Zoom meeting on social emotional learning. And they had the first one in April. So I would encourage you all, if you can't attend when they have them, they record them all and post them to their website. A lot of really phenomenal and current information with our situation right now.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Ms. Moffett?
Yes, there's so many things that have been said prior to my comments. And I wanted to let people know that every year I try to post something to thank the teachers on Teacher Week, Teacher Appreciation Week. And this year I did as well. And I'm hoping that all of our teachers will have access to what I wrote, because it addresses their willingness, not only the teachers, but all of our staff, our Cuyahoga Falls staff, who have gone so far above and beyond. I've heard of phone calls being made at all hours of the day. I've heard of teachers, sending things to their kids. It's just incredible. But I will honestly say that in my note, when I heard about what was going to be happening with our instruction outside of the classroom, my teacher heart immediately felt that it was a lot more work with a lot less perk. And in my note, I talked about the perks that the teachers are not receiving. They're not in the classroom where they can see that the kids might need something, and through a subtle look or something like that, they know exactly what needs to be addressed with that student. They're via our internet, we're not being able to see some of the lessons that are practiced in the classroom every day, like kindness and things like that. We aren't together to do the celebrations to support each other and share stories that teach us a little bit more about each other so that we can understand each other better. So if you have an opportunity, please take a look at what was written, because I think it expresses not just my thoughts, but the thoughts of the board, especially the last paragraph. And I'm going to take the time to read that, and hopefully you won't mind. I said, take care of yourselves and nurture yourself as you would your students. You may not hear this often enough, so I will use my loud voice to say what you need to hear over and over again. You are deeply appreciated and can't be thanked enough for trying to make our upside down world be a place where students continue to learn and receive support in so many different ways. You are our first responders, essential workers, and heroes. Thank you, thank you, thank you to all of our Black Tiger family. There you go. Congratulations, seniors. Congratulations, staff, for making it through till the end of the school year. Congratulations, families, for supporting your kids, and all of our staff during this very tricky time. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Moffett.
Thank you.
OSBA is also having virtual student success liaison meetings, which are interesting. One little piece of information that I picked up from one of them is that approximately 9 out of 10 students worldwide are out of school right now due to the pandemic. 9 out of 10. Let's hope this doesn't last much longer. And on that note.
Just a second.
Oh,
I forgot something.
okay.
We don't want to be remiss by letting anyone think that we are not acknowledging any public comments, correct? Have we received anything?
We have not.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to clarify that before our meeting ended.
Thank you, Ms. Moffett.
You.
Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
I'll second.
Roll call, Ms. Stoichkoi.
Ms. Moffett,
Aye.
Ms. Schofield,
Aye.
Ms. White,
Aye.
Mr. Gomez,
Aye.
Mr. Martin.
Aye.
I'd like to thank David Thursby for hanging in here with us during this meeting to make sure that we have been live streamed the entire time. And I appreciate you all. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, everybody.
Night,
Stay
everybody.
healthy.
Good night.